Hello students, I hope all of you are fine. So in today's class, we are going to start with the next theory of learning, that is classical conditioning theory. Classical conditioning theory, it was given by one Russian physiologist, and the name of that is Ivan Pavlov. Ivan Pavlov, basically he was not a psychologist, he was a physiologist, and his main research work was on digestion, and he also won Nobel Prize while working on digestion. When he was doing his research on digestion, he just noticed that a dog is saliving at the mere sight of food dish. Means whenever there is any kind of food that is kept in front of the dog, he is going to produce saliva. So when he was just observing all these things, then a sudden idea that came into his mind, that if a dog can produce saliva after seeing the food, can the same dog produce saliva after listening any bell or after seeing any light? So then when this idea came into his mind, he decided to do research, that he is going to teach that dog to produce the saliva after listening a bell. So to do this thing, he conducted an experiment. Now we are going to discuss about that experiment. In this experiment, first of all, he conducted this experiment on a dog. What he did, if I think you can see from this picture that there is a dog. He attached a capsule to the salivary gland of the dog so that he can assess the flow of the saliva. Now, just to make learning possible, what he did, in the initial days, he was ringing the bell in front of the dog. Immediately after the bell, he was uh, he was giving meat powder in front of the dog, and the moment dog was observing the meat powder, he was producing the saliva. So the same experiment was continued for several days. Daily, the bell was ringing in front of that dog. Immediately after the bell, the meat powder was presented and the dog was producing saliva, so that he can make the association between left brain and right brain of the dog. So after some days, the dog was able to make the association between left brain and right brain. That means he was able to learn this thing, that the moment the bell rings, immediately the meat powder is going to be presented in front of him. So after some days, the moment the bell was ring in front of him, immediately he produced saliva. Why he did this? So because there was a association that was made now in the dog, that is that now the bell is there, the ringing of the bell is there, that means now I am going to eat the food. So after some trials, when the bell rang, immediately dog produced saliva. So this was the only purpose of Ivan Pavlov, that he wanted to teach that dog to produce the saliva after listening a bell. So that means here the learning was possible just because when he was able to teach the dog to make the association between left brain and right brain. So in this classical conditioning experiment, four kind of conditions was used. First was unconditioned stimulus, second was unconditional response, third was conditional stimulus, fourth is conditional response. So in this experiment, classical conditioning experiment, unconditioned stimulus means that is not under the condition of the experiment. On the other hand, conditional response means the response that is not under the condition of the experiment. If condition stimulus is means this is the condition of my experiment. Condition response means the response that is produced by the bell. So now I'm just going to moving back to the that experiment. In our experiment, Ivan Pavlov decided that the dog has to produce the saliva after listening bell. So that means bell is the conditioned stimulus, and production of saliva after listening the bell, that is the conditional response. So now, initial, if you are able to recall that in the initial days, the Pavlov was continuously ringing the bell in front of the dog, and immediately after ringing the bell, he was uh, he was just keeping some food in front of the dog so that he can produce the saliva to make the association between left brain and right brain. So here the bell is the condition stimulus because bell comes under the condition of the experiment. Second is meat powder. In there is no meat powder in the condition of the experiment, so that is why meat powder is unconditional stimulus. In the initial trials, dog was producing the saliva after seeing the meat powder. So that means when the dog was producing saliva after seeing the meat powder, that is called as conditioned response. Then CR means when the dog was producing the saliva after listening the bell, that is called as conditioned stimulus. So the bell is conditioned stimulus, meat powder is unconditioned stimulus, the saliva production after seeing the meat powder, that is the unconditional response, and saliva after the bell is conditional response. So these are the four main key terms that was used by Ivan Pavlov in his experiment. Now, if you are able to understand this smallest thing, that in the classical conditioning learning theory, learning was made possible just when he was able to make the association between left brain and right brain. So that means, is this classical conditioning learning is possible for human beings also? Then the answer is yes. We can also use classical conditioning theory in our day to day life, as well as we can also teach the animals also, and we can also apply the same learning theory on the human beings also, so that we can lead a disciplined life. We can use classical conditioning in developing good habits such as cleanliness, respect for the elders, punctuality, and we can also eliminate some bad habits or some kind of conditioned fears. And third, we can also train animals. Here, as this Pavlov did the same thing, he trained the dog to produce the saliva after listening any bell. Similarly, we can give trainings to the animals by making association between left brain and right brain. We can also develop some kind of good habits in human beings so that we can eliminate some bad habits. For example, if a child is not disciplined, then we can just say, like for example, the students who are living in the hostel, they have particular time for food. For example, 7 to 8 is the breakfast time, 1 to 2 is the lunch time, and 7 to 8 is the dinner time. So if you are not going to go to the mess at this particular time, it may be that 15 minutes before or 15 minutes after, that is okay. But if you are going after 1 or 2 hours in the mess, and then you will not be able to find out the food, so that means in that case it will be very difficult for you to uh, learn such things. Then we can also use classical conditioning in some psychotherapeutic session. We can also develop some favorable and unfavorable attitudes towards learning, teachers, and the school. Classical conditioning is also useful for the elimination of some kinds of fears and phobias. Then the next conditioning theory is operant conditioning theory. I think it's clear from its picture that it is also called as reward and punishment theory. Another name of operant conditioning is instrumental learning theory. So in your exams and MCQs, the question may come like, what is the another name of operant conditioning? Or operant conditioning is also called as, or reward and punishment theory is also called as. So you must know the answer that it is also called as operant conditioning, reward and punishment theory, or instrumental learning theory. I think it's clear from its name now that yes, in this, to make learning possible, the psychologist is going to use reward and punishment technique. This operant conditioning technique was given by B.F. Skinner and with the help of Edward Lee Thorndike. If you remember, in the laws of learning, we discussed about that Edward Lee Thorndike gave three major laws and six minor laws, in which one major law was the law of effect. I have already told you that in the law of effect, we discussed about that whatever you are going to learn, that is going to give you some effect. That effect may be positive, that effect may be negative. If the effect is positive, then you are going to rehearse that thing again and again, means you are going to repeat that thing. On the other hand, if the effect is negative, then it is going to give you tension. So basically, in operant or instrumental conditioning technique, B.F. Skinner used Edward Lee Thorndike's law of effect. So means we are going to make learning possible with law of effect. Whatever we are going to learn, if the effect is positive, I am going to repeat that behavior. If the effect is negative, I am not going to repeat the behavior. That is going to give me some tension. So what happened in operant conditioning theory? So he conducted this experiment on a hungry rat. He placed a hungry rat in a glass box. Why he made glass box? So that we can assess the activities of the rat. What exactly he did? He made a glass box, and that glass box is also called as Skinner box. In that glass box, there was a mechanical device that was attached with a pipe. From that mechanical device, there was some food. In that mechanical device, there was some food kept there, and there was one lever. Lever means button. There was a button that was in that glass box. Now we are going to teach the rat how to press that button. If the rat is going to press that lever, then he is going to get food as a reward. And there are also some electrical rods in that glass box to produce electric shock. I think this is clear to everyone now. So I'm going to use the main terms. There is a glass box in the experiment. That glass box is called as Skinner box. In this box, there is a mechanical device that is filled with food, and there is a pipe that is attached to that mechanical device, and there is a lever also. If rat is going to press that lever, he is going to get food as a reward, and there are some electrical rods to generate electric shock. If rat is not going to press the lever, he is going to get electric shock as a punishment. So I think everything is clear from this experiment now, that we are going to teach the rat how to press the lever. So what happened exactly? What was the main observation that was done by B.F. Skinner? That in the initial trials, the rat was not having this knowledge that yes, there is a lever inside that box. So he was continuously observing the rat. The rat was roaming here and there in search of food. After some time, by chance, the lever was pressed by him, and he get food as a reward. So the next day, the same experiment was continued, and the same experiment was continued for several days so that we can make learning possible. So what exactly happened after some days? The main observation by B.F. Skinner was that the rate of pressing the lever was noticeably increased to get food as a reward and to protect himself from electric shock. So Why this theory was called as operant conditioning or instrumental conditioning theory? Instrumental means there is an instrument in this conditioning theory. Operant means operate. Conditioning means to make learning possible. So that means in this, the main purpose of Skinner was to make learning possible for the rat so that he can press the lever. Lever pressing is to operate that instrument. Conditioning means to make learning possible. So the same thing happened after some days. The rat was having this knowledge that this is the exact place where if I'm going to go this place, I'm just going to press the lever and I'll get food as a reward. If I'm not going to press the lever, I'll get electric shock as punishment. So the rate of pressing the lever was noticeably increased to get food as reinforcement or reward and to protect himself from that punishment. And B.F. Skinner used four types of reinforcement in his experiment: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, continuous reinforcement, and partial reinforcement. Positive reinforcement means it is used in reward training. For example, getting a big hug from a mother after he has put away his toys in a positive reinforcement. In the same experiment, when the rat was pressing the lever and he was getting the food as a reward, that is the example of positive reinforcement. He also used negative reinforcement, means every time we cannot give positive reinforcement to a child. I'm just going to give you here one example so that you can understand it in a better way. Let's say that a child is having the habit of thumb sucking, and we want to eliminate this habit. Now, as a psychologist, what can we do is that if I'm going to use this operant conditioning or behavioral modification theory, then yes, we can use this reinforcement schedule for that child. So in the initial days, I am going to use continuous reinforcement with positive or negative. Continuous reinforcement means every day we are going to give reward to that child. But if I am going to, let's say, if I am going to say, yes, for the next 1 hour, if you are not going to suck your thumb, then I'll give you a chocolate. Now, what is going to be happen if in every hour I am going to give him the chocolate? Then he is going to eliminate one habit, but he is going to develop another habit, that is eating chocolate. So just to just to save him from this another habit, we are going to use positive and negative reinforcement side by side. So sometimes we are going to use this line: if you are not going to suck your thumb for next 1 hour, then I am going to give you a chocolate. In the negative reinforcement, I am going to use this line that if I'll see you that sucking the thumb, if you are sucking the thumb and I am going to observe you, then I will not give you the chocolate. So that means this is called the example of positive and negative reinforcement. In the positive reinforcement, I am going to use the positive line that yes, I am going to give you the chocolate. In the negative reinforcement, I am going to use the line that then you will not get the chocolate. Then the third type of reinforcement is continuous reinforcement. Continuous reinforcement is that continuously for a smallest change in the behavior, we are going to give reward to that person. Then the last is partial reinforcement. Partial reinforcement means sometimes reward has been given and sometimes it is not. Partial reinforcement is useful after some days of the reinforcement schedule. Here in the same example, if a child is having the habit of thumb sucking, we cannot use punishment technique initially. First of all, we must use this 4 reinforcement schedule. First of all, in the initial days, I am going to use continuous reinforcement with positive or negative. After 10 or 12 days, now I can shift to the partial reinforcement with positive or negative. Example: a child came to you and he is having the habit of thumb sucking. So initially, continuously for a smallest change in the behavior, either I am going to use positive or negative. Now 10 days are passed. On the 11th day I can plan that now on the daily basis I am not going to give him or her the reward. We are going to shift to the partial reinforcement again with positive or negative. Means sometimes reinforcement has been given, sometimes it is not being given. Then the last technique is punishment to change the behavior. If by using the whole reinforcement schedule, still if the child is not changing his behavior, in that case I can use punishment technique. But keep one thing in your mind, that punishment is always the last option. This is never the first option. Most of the time it happens, I have seen many of the parents, many of the societies, many of the schools, that whenever a child or person develops some bad habits, then they directly start using the punishment technique, and that is going to affect negatively the behavior of that person. If we want to modify the behavior of that person in a positive way, then it's better that first of all we should use the proper reinforcement schedule, and if by using reinforcement schedule that person is not able to change his or her behavior, then we can move towards the punishment schedule. So this is all about classical conditioning. This is all about operant conditioning. Then the next theory is insight learning theory. Insight learning theory, it was given by a group of Gestalt psychologists. If you remember, in the unit 1 schools of psychology, we discussed in the fourth school, that was Gestalt psychology, that was given by 3 German psychologists, Kurt Koffka, Wolfgang Kohler and Max Wertheimer. So insight learning theory, basically it was given by 3 of them, and they used Gestalt word just to and the meaning of Gestalt was wholeness. According to them, whenever we are going to perceive, whenever we are going to learn anything, we must use this law of whole. Means first of all we must see the situation as a whole, mean a complete form. Only then we will be able to learn in a better way. Then insight learning, in the insight learning theory, the main experiment was done by Kohler only. Kohler conducted an experiment on a chimpanzee, and the name of that chimpanzee was Sultan. Now we are going to discuss what was the main experiment. In that experiment, he kept hungry Sultan in a cage. In that case, 2 sticks were placed. These 2 sticks were like that. If anyone is going to play with these two sticks, means there was a spring that was attached with these sticks. If anyone is going to play with these sticks are going to be joined together. Now, he also kept some bananas outside the cage. So this was the situation. A case, in that case he kept Sultan, chimpanzee, and 2 sticks inside the case, and outside the case he kept some bananas. So this was the situation. Then he started observing Sultan. Now because the Sultan was hungry, what he did initially, when he saw the banana, he tries to get the bananas with the help of his hand, but the distance of the bananas were so far that he was not able to get the bananas with the help of his hand. So he was trying and he was making errors because he was not able to reach the bananas. After some times, when he became tired to get the bananas, then he just picked up one stick and he tried to get the bananas with the help of that stick, but again he failed because the distance of that bananas from the Sultan, that was the length of his hand with plus the length of both the sticks. Now after making so many trials and errors, when he was not able to get the bananas, then he became tired and he just started playing with those sticks. And now while playing with the sticks, the suddenly sticks joined together, and the idea came into his mind that yes, now the stick is bigger than before, and I can easily get those bananas. And he was able to have that banana. And that experience to get the bananas after making so many trials, after making so many errors, that experience is called as the aha experience. So that means, in insight learning theory, first of all, we are going to do some trials and errors, and insight develops always suddenly. Insight means yes, when you just get an idea to come out from the situation, and the idea came all of a sudden. So there are some qualities of or the characteristics of insight learning theory. The first characteristic is insight is sudden, that our insight always develops suddenly. It also develops due to the understanding, means like in the same example, initially Sultan was not having this knowledge that there was two sticks and I can easily just join these two sticks and I can get the bananas. Initially he was not having this understanding. He was simply trying to take the bananas with the help of his hand or with the help of one stick. That means it always develops after some trials and errors. Then it also happens when you are going to perceive the stimulus or perceive the whole situation. Right now in the same example, when Sultan become tired after making so many trials and errors, and he started playing with the sticks. When the sticks joined together, he just there was an idea, that was a sudden idea that came into his mind, that yes, now the stick is bigger than before. That means old objects appear in the new pattern and organization due to the insight. Objects were same, but these old objects appear in front of him in a new pattern. Now the stick is bigger than before and I can easily get those bananas. And the higher species of animals including man has more insight as compared to the members of the lower species. So this is about insight learning theory. Insight is often used in the problem solving, puzzles, and riddles. Whenever we are going to face, or we are just going to face any kind of situations or problems in our life, then initially we can use some trials and errors. But after some time, when we are going to just observe, we are going to perceive the situation as a whole. When we are going to get the solution, then that experience, that sudden experience to get the solution of that particular problem, is called as the aha experience. So this is about insight learning theory. Now we are going to move towards the next learning theory, that is Toleman sign learning theory. Toleman sign learning theory, it is given by Toleman, and what he said, that it is clear from its name, sign learning theory. That means whenever we are going to learn anything in our life, we must follow some signs, some clues to reach that goal. For example, when you go somewhere, let's say you are going to visit a hospital, and when the moment you are going to enter in that hospital, there will be some notice boards, there will be some signboard. On the basis of those signboards, you will be able to identify that where exactly you are going to go. So that means signs, clues, symbols helps us in the learning processes. So basically what he did, he conducted experiment on two groups, and these two groups of rat. In one experimental group, one was the another group. What he did, he just make two groups. In the first group of the rats, he just placed a goal. He just placed a piece of bread, and there were no sign and no clues in the mid of the pathway. But on the other hand, in the another experimental group, he just kept some small pieces of bread so that he can reach the goal very easily. So what was the main observation done by Toleman, that the rats who were having some signs in between to reach the goal, they were able to learn the right pathway very easily as compared to the group where the signs and the clues were not provided to the rat. So on the basis of this learning theory, Toleman concluded that we can make learning possible if we are going to use some signs and some symbols in between, so that we can learn things in a better way. So this is about Tolman sign learning theory. It's very simple. Sign learning theory, whatever you want to learn, just simply use some signs, use some symbols, so that you can make learning possible in an easy way. The last learning theory is social learning theory. Social learning theory was given by Albert Bandura. Albert Bandura used very simple approach. What he said that social learning theory, social means society, learning means learning by practice. He said that while living in this society, when we are meet with the people, we are going to face the situation, then we are going to observe them, and when we are going to observe them, we are going to imitate their behavior. After imitation, we are going to practice that behavior, and we will be able to learn that particular skill. So according to him, only three main processes to learn. First of all, we are going to observe. After observation, we are going to imitate, that means we are going to copy that particular behavior. After copying or after imitating that behavior, we are going to do practice for that particular behavior. And when we are practicing, as we have already discussed this thing in the learning definition also, that learning comes when we are going to do practice for a certain period of time. So according to him, he just simply used, it's a very simple learning theory. Only three processes are required to learn anything: observation, imitation, and practice. So this is all about social learning theory, and I'm just going to conclude all the theories. The first theory was trial and error learning theory. This was given by Edwardly Thorndike. He conducted experiment on a rat on a wooden maze. Then the second learning theory was classical conditioning theory. It was given by Ivan Pavlov, and he conducted experiment on a dog. And what was the method he used to make the association between left brain and right brain. Then the third theory was operant conditioning theory. It was given by B.F. Skinner. He used the law of effect. That was given by Edwardly Thorndike. And what he said that with the help of reward and punishment techniques, we can make learning possible. Then insight learning theory. Insight learning theory says that just let them use their insight. First of all, just put a situation in front of the person, then let him do trials and error. After conducting some trials and errors, he will be able to use his insight in a different form. Then the next is Toleman sign learning theory, given by Toleman. What he said that whenever we want to learn anything, simply follow some signs, some clues, and it is going to make your learning easy. The last learning theory is social learning theory. It was given by Albert Bandura. What he said that three processes are necessary to learning. First is observation, then imitation, and then the last is practice. So this is all about theories of learning. In the next class, we are going to discuss factors affecting study habits and role of nurse, and that is the last part of learning topic. Till then, take care. Bye bye.